The unity of all who dwell in freedom, the unity is their only sure defense.
In 1854, men, women, and children walked into this little white schoolhouse in Ripon, Wisconsin, divided. When they emerged, they were united. United in freedom. This year on March 20th, Ripon Rabbit Hole and thefreedomflame.com will rekindle the spirit that keeps the flame alive in our annual celebration. We invite everyone, regardless of your political affiliation or location in the world, to join us in this year's celebration.
May the light of freedom, coming to all darkened lands, flame brightly, until at last the darkness is no more.
Register now for event details at thefreedomflame.com.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The unity of all who dwell.
Unlocked and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner, is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner, is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion. I'm lost in the wonderland of confusion. I'm lost. this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Brandon's lost in a wonderland of delusion. Oh, wait, I didn't say that.
Ripon Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Coming to you from a secret cave, hidden deep within the wilderness. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live from a secret cave hidden deep within the wilderness of Tennessee. That's right, we're ripping through the electromagnetic soup. We're tearing through the atmosphere, and we're tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the Dark Wolf's Den radio show for Wednesday, March the 2nd, 2022. So whether you're on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Folks, tonight we are going to be diving down into yet another state of mystery, the great state of Ohio, and it is, of course, absolutely loaded with the paranormal. And we're going to get to all that and more here in just a moment, but first, let's go ahead and see who all we have over here in our YouTube chat rooms, both on the Dark Wolf's Den radio show as well as the Ripon Rabbit Hole. How you guys doing over here tonight? Like Sandy B over here hanging out in the DWD show. Glad to see you, Sandy B. Happens to be it's the only one hanging out in the DWD show right now. If you guys want to hop on over there, it is an empty room. Prairie Fire says, evening all. Arrow Taylor says, hello. Hey, Arrow, glad to see both you guys. Who else we have here? Hey, the Dark Wolf's Den show said, hey, everybody. Sandy B also checking in on the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Maggie's Ace, glad to see you, says, hello, all. And howl to you too, Maggie's. Glad to see you. Raider Champion throwing in Freedom Flame March 20th. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Juanito 1975 checking in the Dark Wolf's Den show. Glad to see you, Juanito. Always a pleasure, my friend. Overprotected, glad to see you. Says, I'm looking forward to Ohio. That's where Janie Lane is from. That's really cool. What an interesting synchronicity that it would be so close to the Janie Lane episode. X-Gen in the house saying, evening, fellow travelers. Evening, X-Gen. Always glad to see you, man. Danny Mull. We did the one Mandela strikes again, okay? There's no telling how many Mandelas have recently come into play. I have heard of a few myself. Do they have wolves in Tennessee? I know they have coyotes there. They have this wolf in Tennessee, that is for sure. Overprotected, always Glad to see you too. Overprotected and Mandani Mall hopping over into the DWD show, evening out the numbers in both chat rooms. I'm glad to see everybody here tonight. We got a couple things to talk about real quick before we really get into the rest of the episode. Don't forget, folks, coming up March 20th, as we heard in the very first of the show, in case you missed it, we have the Freedom Flame coming up on that day. That is the day we celebrate the lighting of the Freedom Flame and the moment when a number of men, women, and children went into a little white schoolhouse in Ripon, Wisconsin, and come out united under the flag of freedom. And we celebrate that once again every year, March 20th. This is our 5th year on the Ripon Rabbit Hole.com and Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, celebrating the Freedom Flame. 68 years. Apparently we aren't really good at math and we made a small error. 68 years of the Freedom Flame. 168 years of the very first event that kicked all of it off. And we're very much looking forward to that. Also, real quick, folks, public service announcement. Do be careful online. With everything going on in the world, there has been a large ramp up in hacking and people trying to access your information. There's been a lot of phishing emails of different sorts going out lately, even text messages. If you get a message that says your order is ready, or a email that says, your order is ready from UPS, and you've not ordered anything, that is a phishing email. Do not open it. Another one that's been really popular is your Netflix account has been, what's the word I'm looking for? Your Netflix account has been deactivated. Thank you. Has been deactivated, or that you're going to be deactivated, and that you need to make a payment. Once again, these are phishing emails. Be very, very, very careful what you guys are clicking on. We don't need any of you guys compromised by a lot of these hacking groups that are out here in doubling down in full force ever since the events of the last week or two have started occurring. So once again, just be very watchful. A lot of people who aren't used to the internet, don't really have a good knowledge of how a lot of this works, end up getting tricked a lot of times. And I've almost got tricked a couple times myself. I'm expecting a package or something, and I get what looks like a valid UPS notice, only to find out that it was, once again, a phishing notice or a phishing email. So you guys just kind of watch what you're doing there. Be very, very careful. Double question everything you open. If you're not sure, don't do it. And if you have any questions whatsoever, you can always forward any questionable emails to the riponrabbithole.com. Forward it to riponrabbithole@gmail.com. Again, that's riponrabbithole@gmail.com. riponrabbithole@gmail.com. Any of the questionable ones, we'll definitely take a look at it. Definitely do not give out personal information online unless you are absolutely sure of where your information is going. So again, a public service announcement from the riponrabbithole.com. And whether you are joining us on the YouTube chat rooms or around the world on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the riponrabbithole.com, or after the show on BitChute or Rumble, we appreciate having every last one of you guys along for the ride. That's right. By the way, if you are over on BitChute or Rumble, if you don't mind going ahead and giving me a subscribe real quick, it really would help us out. With that said, folks, we got a lot of paranormal to cover and a little time to get there. But before we can, we've got two more fun little segments we must do. The first of which we call Today in History. On this day in 1933, the film King Kong, directed by Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Shudsack and starring Fay Ray, premieres at both Radio City Music Hall and RKO Roxy in New York City. That premiere happened on this day once again in 1933, and that is today's segment of Today in History.
Say what?
Our quote of the day today comes from Charlton Heston. He says, and I quote, "Political correctness is tyranny with manners," end quote. And I fully agree with Charlton Heston and fully disagree with political correctness. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is today's segment of
Say what?
As we all know, political correctness is censorship, and censorship of free speech, or any freedoms for that matter, really doesn't work in my book. I like having the freedom to talk about things like we are going to be discussing tonight, and that is, of course, the paranormal state of mystery of Ohio. And Ohio has its fair share of cryptids, as we all know about things like the Loveland Frogman. That's a very famous cryptid, but as you guys know on this show, we like to bring up case files that you don't quite get to hear everywhere else. And to help us with this tonight, our buddy Ben Miller is back with us. What do you got to start off tonight's list of cryptids, Ben?
The Carmel area creature. I won't go into great detail, but this thing was spotted on December 12th, 2014 by a 60-year-old ex-Marine and his wife while driving at night on Carmel Road in Highland County. While driving up a hill, a creature ran in front of their car and disappeared into the forest. They described it as having gray-colored skin, it didn't appear to have arms, and it was running on its two muscular back legs, which its knees were bent backwards.
No arms, white skin, and knees bent completely backwards. This creature sounds extremely creepy looking.
As mentioned, many link this to the Fresno Nightcrawlers, while others try to debunk it by saying it was simply a deer.
We're going to have to go over the Fresno White Crawlers sometime. Earth Daughter, glad to see you in the house, as well as Royal Magnolias.
Oddly enough, I must note that when I first made my Fresno Nightcrawler video, everyone was claiming it was possibly a gazelle.
Well, tell me, Ben, do you think it was a gazelle?
I question this, since gazelle aren't native to the U.S.
Definitely throws a wrench into that particular theory. Kind of like the swamp gas theory, right? Completely ridiculous from the get-go.
Since that time, all places have removed the gazelle part and are now saying white-tailed deer. It could be coincidence, or maybe I do have more influence in the cryptid community than I thought. Anyway, deer can walk on their back legs, but I've yet to see one do so while crossing a road.
To the best of my knowledge, though, yes, a deer can raise up on their hind legs for a short amount of time. They can't stay on their hind legs long enough to actually cross a road. But Ben, what other kind of cryptids do you have for us in the state of Ohio tonight?
The Crosswick Monster. This town is located in Warren County, and as such the creature has also been known by that name as well. For years people in the area were aware of odd-looking large webbed prints being left in the mud, but no one knew what caused it.
Webbed prints is something that we don't get a whole lot of, but in my opinion that would suggest a sea creature, right guys? What do you think, Deborah O'Connor? Glad to see you hopping in, and we had another person hop in there real quick. Nyakis, good to see you, Nyakis.
Then on May 29th of 1882, two boys named Ed and Joe Lynch, who were 13 and 11 at the time, were in for the shock of their life. On that day, the boys were sitting on the bank of the river when they heard a strange rustling in the reeds beside them. Suddenly, a large reptilian creature lunged out at them, and they began to run. This creature ran on 4 legs and was able to catch up to the brothers pretty easily.
So I find this very intriguing because it's not like a lizard man running on 2 legs. This is literally like a large-sized lizard, like a big Komodo dragon or an oversized blue-tail lizard is what I would figure based on this case file so far.
Apparently, the creature used its front legs to grab a hold of Ed, and then it latched onto the boy with its mouth. The lizard then started dragging Ed 100 yards back to a hollowed-out sycamore tree that it apparently was making its home. 3 men named Reverend Jacob Horn, George Peterson, and Alan Jordan, who were fishing nearby, heard the screams and actually saw one of the boys being taken by the beast. They quickly chased after the creature and saw it trying to get its body, with the boy still in its mouth, inside the opening in the tree. Apparently, the lizard became startled by the sound of the men, and it let go of Ed and disappeared into the tree.
What I find utterly fascinating is that this creature is acting like a lizard, like what a biological creature would normally do, a creature of Mother Nature, right? It may be very overgrown, mind you, but this creature is acting like a normal lizard would act, grabbing food, running it back to its nest, and when given a choice of the food or living, it chose living over trying to drag the food into the nest, right? I don't know, it just seems to me like a very natural biological reaction for a creature of nature. What do you guys think?
The boy was taken to Dr. L.C. Lukens in Waynesville and was kept for treatment. The 3 men, along with 60 townsfolk, got together with clubs, rifles, axes, and hunting dogs, and returned to the tree that same night with a plan to cut it down and kill the beast. Halfway through cutting the tree down, the creature emerged from a hole in the top of the tree and jumped to the ground. It then stood up on its back 2 legs, all the while keeping balance with its tail, and abruptly ran away. Half of the group stared in disbelief at what they had just saw, while the other half gave chase. The men followed the creature for many miles before it finally made for cover in a cave under a rock ledge. Everyone waited outside for the lizard to emerge, but it never did, leaving many to believe it found another way out of the cave.
Could this be yet another leftover relic from the dinosaur era? Perhaps we have seen quite a few dinosaur-type cryptids over many states in the series so far. What's to say an overgrown lizard that would have existed at least at the time of the dinosaur isn't still around? If they're savvy enough, of course, right?
The creature was described as standing between 12 to 14 feet when on its back legs, which alone were said to be 4 feet long, and its webbed feet were 12 inches long. Its skin was scaly with a black and white color pattern, along with yellow spots. Its head was 16 inches wide, and it had a long black tongue inside a bright red mouth.
Again, you have a creature that is right out of the dinosaur era, right? Perhaps a Mandela effect shift brought it in, or I only say that half jokingly. Maybe there's time travelers sending creatures to random points in time as part of a nefarious plan. Hey, I mean, look at the deep state today. That's still not the craziest thing I'm sure that you've heard today with everything going on. Or in a more serious note, you've got these Lazarus creatures. These are creatures that supposedly went extinct, and then all of a sudden nature has literally brought them back. Who's to say that some of these creatures from the dinosaur era, nature itself couldn't say, hey, I want to have that again on the earth? That's not exactly extreme or outside of the realm of science, just less likely, right? Remember, at the beginning of the year, we did that New Year's Eve show with our predictions, and I predicted that by the end of the year, these dinosaurs would be a real thing and we would use them as pets like we do cats and dogs today. So we'll see how close I come on that prediction too, right?
Ed recovered from the ordeal, but at the time was badly bruised and cut up, along with suffering from spasms.
What do you think? You think I'll be right on my dinosaur prediction? Deranged lunatic, glad to see you hop in. They're rolling in the door now over at the DWD show like Carol's Cookies. Wouldn't it be neat, guys, to have a dinosaur you could walk around with like a pet? Maybe riding a stegosaurus down the street? Heck with a license, right?
I loved reading some of the language and descriptions given of this encounter from the original article, but I also appreciate vivid details and names being given. All names mentioned are found in the 1880 census, and even though this was the last time the creature was spotted, it lends credence to the encounter.
I would have to agree with Ben on that one. It still doesn't prove it was a 100% encounter, but it does prove that the people that reported it did actually exist in real life. So, like he said, it definitely lends credence.
Since 1966, Ohio has had quite a few sightings of one of my favorite cryptids, which would be Mothman.
Oh, nice. I know how you have a very special place in your heart for the Mothman cryptids, bud. Tell us about this one.
On November 17th, 1966, a teenager was driving home on Route 7 near Cheshire when he spotted what he described as a 10-foot-tall gray man with wings and glowing red eyes flying in the sky.
You know, it really amazes me that we've come across this many Mothman cases across the different states. I don't know about you guys, but the only Mothman that I knew of was in West Virginia. So this is really mind-boggling that there are so many different pockets of the same Mothman type creatures.
Then in that same year, on December 7th, 4 women were driving on Route 33 when they saw a brownish, silver-colored man with glowing red eyes flying overhead.
That would be quite scary, don't you agree? Juanito, 1975, says he's a little scared. Says, heck no, the moment that dinosaur gets mad at you, it will eat you. Well, that is a good possibility. You got to make sure they're tame. If they're going to be pets, they got to be tame. Dino the dinosaur, the purple dinosaur, says Mandani Mall. Dino from Sandy says, or Dino from Flintstones says Sandy B. Deranged Lunatic brings up a good point. Says, I watched a good comedy last night. It was called the State of the Union speech. You know, I haven't seen that one yet. I heard it was kind of a snoozer, but that's the one by the demented old man that tries to give a speech, but no matter what he does, he can't get his words right and has no idea where he is to begin with. I've heard it's an okay one. I would have to go back and watch it. I know there were a couple funny moments I seen in the advertisements anyway. AJ in the house, glad to see you, AJ. But we're talking about a Mothman creature here. This creature, as now the second sighting, is flown over this person's car.
The reports don't stop there, since many sightings are still occurring to this day, as well as in nearby Michigan.
I find it interesting that it's in cold areas. West Virginia in the wintertime gets really cold. So does Michigan as well as Ohio. So it makes me wonder if it isn't a temperature and climate reason that we're finding these in certain states and not others.
Moving on, we have quite a menagerie of different looking cryptids that are more aquatic in nature. Now at this point, I am sure many of you would assume I'd be talking about Bessie or the Loveland Frog, which do make their home in Ohio. But as you know, I like to bring more focus to the lesser known ones.
Which is the reason I have you back on this show as often as I can, my friend. What interesting cryptids do you have that are a little lesser known than normal?
The first one I would like to talk about would be the Charles Mills Monster. On March 28, 1959, 3 boys named Denny Patterson, Wayne Armstrong, and Michael Lane were enjoying some time at the Charles Mills Reservoir when something would happen that would change their lives forever. While standing on the shore, they heard an odd splashing sound coming from the black water. Suddenly, a 7-foot-tall creature with glowing green eyes stood up out of the water and started to walk towards them. The boys ran off in terror, but they claimed the creature appeared not to have arms and its feet were webbed.
A lot of strange to unpack in this one. Number one, the glowing green eyes. That is quite strange. 7 foot tall isn't exactly super giant. That's tall human. But what it gets me is this is the second creature we've had tonight that has no arms, strangely enough.
The police were notified, and after checking out the area, they did find prints that resembled flippers from a scuba diver. This creature was once again spotted in 1963 in a similar fashion, but there aren't many details behind that encounter. One could easily write this off as simply what it sounds like, a person in a scuba diver suit pranking people, and that is highly possible. However, keep in mind, this reservoir is fairly close to where the Loveland Frog was spotted, as well as a peculiar water-loving Sasquatch that I may talk about later on, who is known as Orange Eyes.
I find it incredibly fascinating that you have these three cryptid creatures in this very relatively small location. If I didn't know any better and did not want to invoke the paranormal per se, I would almost argue that there is more likely than not a bioexperimentation lab near that keeps losing its experiments. At least that's my opinion.
Moving in from the water, I found a really fascinating story about a type of creature that we rarely talk about, and that is werewolves. Yes, werewolves. Ohio is home to many sightings of dogmen, and those reports are becoming so frequent in just about every state that I swear they are beginning to rival that of Bigfoot.
I can't disagree with you, Ben. There have been quite a few dogman tales as we've went through this State of Mystery series.
However, I am keeping with my classification that dogmen and werewolves are not the same thing.
Could you explain what you mean by that, Ben? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I really see the dogman and the werewolf creatures a lot closer to being the same thing. What do you mean on that?
I get a lot of flack for this, but to me, dogmen are a creature, much like a dog or cat, whereas the werewolf normally starts as a human being afflicted with a curse or malady and becomes one, or in some instances can change back and forth during certain circumstances. That is my view from researching this, and yours may be different.
Alright, Ben, I'll give you that. That's a pretty fair argument for that. But it really is hard to tell in a lot of these case files whether it is one or the other.
Anyway, there is an interesting story from the town of Defiance, which I wanted to share. On July 25th in 1972, two men named Ted Davis and Tom Jones were working night shift at the Norfolk and Western train yard and saw something that would stand out in local history. At around 4 a.m., Ted was connecting an air hose between train cars when he looked over and saw two large, hairy feet standing beside him. As he scanned up, he was met with a hairy creature with large, sharp fangs that stood about 6 to 8 feet tall, wore only blue jeans, and was holding a big stick on its shoulder.
Could you imagine you see two giant hairy feet below you as you're working, and as you look up you see this human-sized dog wolf creature holding something on its shoulder? This is fascinating to me. What's interesting is he was wearing blue jeans, like it was a human that possibly had turned werewolf.
The creature then hit Mr. Davis with the stick and ran into the forest, running side to side like a caveman would in the movies. A few nights later, both Ted and Tom saw the creature standing in a field nearby before it ran off again. Originally, Tom heard of Ted's story and thought it was a prank, but now seeing it for himself, he knew it was very real. Then on that same night, a local grocer claimed that he was also attacked by a creature, but again, it used a club.
And I find that fascinating that this is twice that the creature has attacked using a weapon of some type, a tool to the creature, which shows at least a mediocre level of intelligence.
Finally, a person driving at night saw the same creature run out in front of their car. What is interesting, if not peculiar, is that on all sightings there was a full moon in the sky.
I do find it incredibly fascinating that all of these case files involved the full moon, as in the traditional werewolf lore, right? Errol Taylor says a Pelosi sighting? Now that's being mean to the werewolf now.
Also, when Ted first saw the being, he reported it to the police, but they never released any of the details to the public. Yet, sightings still popped up regardless.
So it cannot be said that the police were influencing these case files, as they did not even release any information about them.
The police took the matter very seriously, but never found any evidence. They state in the original article that it became a matter of public safety. This very easily could have been someone pulling a prank, yet its victims were oddly chosen. And when reading the original article, the police seemed very confused about what this actually was.
So watch out, Ohio, you have a werewolf in your midst. And I swear it's not me. I'm in Tennessee. Ha ha. Anyways, Ben, what else do you have for us before we go? Do you have any quick stories before we head out to the break and close out the first half of the show tonight?
Okay, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I kept finding all these reports on Bigfoot in Ohio, and, you know me, I tend to relegate those to honorable mentions. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized that a few of those ones needed to be talked about due to how unique they are.
Well, Ben, as you know, we have been tracking these Bigfootses across every state. So what kind of strange Bigfootses does Ohio happen to have?
The first one is called the Cedar Bog Monster. This Sasquatch is said to make its home in the Cedar Bog Nature Preserve.
I don't know. I keep thinking about what Errol Taylor said, calling the werewolf Pelosi. I would say more close to Banshee. That'd be the closest creature I could think of that would match something that disgustingly ugly and loudmouthed at the same time. Just my opinion.
For years, residents spotted a 7-foot-tall Sasquatch with white hair, red eyes, and a terrible smell roaming about. The story goes that in 1945, 2 teenagers from Kettering ventured into the preserve to do some camping. After a few days of not hearing from them, the parents became worried and called the police. Apparently, they found the teenagers' car in a disheveled campsite, but no bodies were ever found. After that day, a fence was put up around the preserve in order to keep people out and wildlife in, but many believe it had everything to do with the bog monster allegedly killing those kids.
We don't normally hear about Bigfootses killing people. They have been known to be aggressive, make no mistake, they're not tame by any means. But we don't normally hear about them being aggressive to the point of killing a person either.
In 1980, a farmer in Bellefontaine was shocked to find this creature apparently trying to get at his dogs. The beast ran off without harming the animals, but it did leave behind 16-inch footprints and a smell of Limburger cheese.
Kind of reminds me of the skunk ape with the really bad odor, right? But we have covered a very wide range of very strange cryptids, but that music means we are out of time for covering any more of the Ohio cryptids this evening. We have to go ahead and take a network break right here. So my name's Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and you're listening to the Dark Wolf's Den Radio Show exclusively on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole. We'll be right back with the second half of the Dark Wolf's Den Radio Show after these messages. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. That's right.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
The unity of all who dwell in freedom is their only sure defense.
In 1854, men, women, and children walked into this little white schoolhouse in Ripon, Wisconsin, divided. When they emerged, they were united. United in freedom. This year on March 20th, Ripon Rabbit Hole and thefreedomflame.com will rekindle the spirit that keeps the flame alive in our annual celebration. We invite everyone, regardless of your political affiliation or location in the world, to join us in this year's celebration.
May the light of freedom, coming to all darkened lands flame bright, until at last the darkness is no more.
Register now for event details at thefreedomflame.com. Oh yeah, your weekend has begun. Hi everyone, it's AJ, the Ripon Rabbit. Are you enjoying tonight's Dark Wolf's Den radio show, State of Mystery for the state of Ohio? I know I am. If you are and you haven't done so already, please hop on over to our website, riponrabbithole.com. That's RIPONRABBITHOLE.com. There you can sign up for your exclusive Backstage VIP pass. It's going to give you unfiltered access down the rabbit hole to where the conversation continues after the show. Here's a look at your extended weekend ahead. Thursday night, tomorrow, March 3rd, Jerry Hicks and the Dark Wolf's Den Show will return with another episode of his Freedom Flame series, this one on false flags. Join him again tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, and howl along with him. Then I'll return Friday, March 4th. Come along with me as we explore the rabbit hole in the art of being focused. We'll explore easy-to-follow tips and tricks that can gain laser-like focus abilities within you. It'll be a lot of fun. Again, that's Friday, March 4th. And then Saturday night, a journey through the rabbit hole of staying calm. That's right. We're going to look at tips, tricks, and techniques to keep you calm in almost every situation. Then we'll end out the weekend right together with you Sunday, March 6th. That's right, the first Sunday of every month, the return of the most interactive game show on radio, Beat Eugene. An evening full of interactive games, puzzles, challenges, and riddles, trivia, and much, much more in an effort to see if you will beat Eugene, or perhaps will he beat you? Tell your friends, tell your family, heck, tell your family's friends to join us and play along as we end out the weekend right together with you Sunday, March 6th. I'm excited for you to come back, Eugene. Are you looking forward to Sunday night's game?
Yes, it is certain.
Yes, it is certain. Eugene will be there with bells on, and we will find out before the end of the weekend who will beat Eugene. You can't win if you don't play. The most interactive family game night on radio returns Sunday, March 6th. A fantastic weekend lineup, wouldn't you agree? We'll return you back to tonight's Dark Wolf's Den radio show, State of Mystery for Ohio. You're listening to the Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, home of the Freedom Flame, the RiponRabbitHole.com.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the Dark Wolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and welcome back to the second half of the Dark Wolf's Den radio show for Wednesday, March the 2nd, 2022. So whether you're on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Folks, in the first half, we went over a large variety of cryptid creatures in the state of Ohio. And, of course, as we do every show, in the second half, we're going to dive deep down into the haunted places of Ohio. But before we do, real quick, make sure that you hop on over to the freedomflame.com. That is the freedomflame.com. We have the countdown timer over there, as well as the story of the Freedom Flame and the importance which it holds. Once again, that is thefreedomflame.com. With that said, let us get our way into our ghost stories. What do you guys say?
The Ohio State Reformatory.
By the way, am I the only one that sees a pattern in this weekend's upcoming shows, aside from my false flag show coming up, which I'm really excited about, where AJ's going to be talking about focus, then staying calm, and then he's going to be beat Eugene. You think he might be trying to show you guys how to beat Eugene? Stay calm and focus, right?
The Ohio State Reformatory, also recognized as the Mansfield Reformatory and located off Reformatory Road in Mansfield, Ohio, is a historic prison turned museum that's been used in a number of film productions and that was made majorly famous in the 1994 film The Shawshank Redemption. Historically, the field on which the reformatory would eventually sit.
One of my absolute favorite movies, by the way. An incredible story. If you've not seen The Shawshank Redemption, I definitely suggest watching it.
It started out in 1862 as a training camp for Civil War soldiers, with construction of the penitentiary starting in 1886.
As you guys already know, I have always said that I am surprised that every inch of Civil War ground isn't extremely haunted. Thus, it fits the recipe for a haunting: high trauma, high emotion, high chance of haunting, right? And then to build a prison on top of it, it only, I'm sure, increased the amount of energy on that site.
In 1896, while the facility was still under construction, it would welcome its first 150 inmates. Unfortunately, due to budget problems, construction of the site would be delayed and wouldn't be officially completed until 1910. The lockup would stay in operation until 1990, when, following a series of litigations by inmates outlining its harsh, overcrowded, and inhumane conditions, it was forced to close its doors. Following its closure, most of the support buildings and grounds, including the outer wall, were demolished, and in 1995, the Mansfield Reformatory Preservation Society was formed and would transform the old prison into a popular museum. Restoration work on the Ohio State Reformatory continues into the present and is funded by both donations and off profits from tours, which are offered to this day.
As we have found with many states, this is yet another location where paranormal researchers can openly go and even take a tour of the facilities.
Disturbingly, inmates faced brutal treatment and unimaginable horrors within Mansfield, resulting in suicides by hanging, murders, and even one incident in which a prisoner literally set himself on fire, and it's estimated that around 200 deaths occurred on its grounds, including the slaying of 2 guards during an escape attempt. Most resulting dead were laid to rest in an unclaimed burial plot just outside of the fence, and many tell the Ohio State Reformatory's vicious past has left its fair share of paranormal energies.
In this, what sounds like extremely torturous situation, you once again have the perfect recipe for a haunting to play out. High trauma, high emotion, high chance of haunting. And it sounds like from everything we just heard, there was a very high amount of both emotion and trauma.
With both staff and visitors reporting extreme cold spots, mists, and half-formed silhouettes in photography, the constant feeling of being watched or followed, disembodied footsteps, screams, and crying, and encounters with both full-bodied apparitions and shadowy figures.
I gotta say, I expected nothing less of this property, but what's really intriguing is not only the pictures that show these apparitions, but the fact that there's more likely than not a number of apparitions playing out here, a number of ghosts around the same area, almost like a vortex of negative energy.
The most famous legend surrounding the site tells of how in 1950, Helen Glock, wife of then Warden Arthur Glock, was killed by an accidental gunshot wound, and how sadly 9 years later Arthur would pass on from a heart attack within his office. The apparitions of both Arthur and Helen have been encountered, and have been heard chatting in hushed voices from the warden's office.
That one makes you wonder about the whole parallel universe once again, that they can be heard chatting. It didn't mention that they were ever seen, but they still seem to be having conversations within that office. That's very interesting.
The historic Prospect Place Estate. The historic Prospect Place Estate, also known as Trinway Mansion, and located off Main Street in Trinway, Ohio, is a historic 29-room manor expanse, listed on both the National Register of Historic Places and on the Ohio Underground Railroad Association's list of Underground Railroad sites.
And if you are interested in the Underground Railroad, our network partner AJ the Ripon Rabbit did an episode on that just this past weekend, so do make sure you go check that out.
Historically, the abode was first constructed in 1856 by abolitionist George Willison Adams. However, this initial structure was burned to the ground in an arson, resulting in the family quickly setting to work on another. Following Adams's death in 1879, the property would be passed between heirs before landing in the hands of his grandson, George Cox, who'd hold on to the site until 1969, after which its new owner would leave it abandoned. Over the years, the mansion would fall into disrepair and would eventually be looted by thieves and vandals. In 1988, it was scheduled for demolition, but fortunately was purchased and saved by Dave Longaberger, who would install security systems and start on restorations. In 2001, George J. Adams, who was actually the great-great-grandson of the original G.W. Adams, and ironically also a Longaberger relative, would purchase the property, and in 2003 would create the G.W. Adams Education Center Incorporated. The historic Prospect Place Estate remains headquarters to the center, and although restorations are still underway, is open to the public for events, tours, and even ghost hunts.
So here we go, folks, yet another place that is open to the public, and these guys specifically mentioned that they are open to the public for ghost hunts. So there you go. If you're in Ohio and are a paranormal researcher, here is one place you might want to check out.
While Ohio was a free state, plenty of race-related violence transpired in its smaller towns, and Prospect Place acted as scene to numerous battles over slavery, with countless enslaved individuals in hiding taking refuge in its basement, and with some who were injured even perishing within. Resulting restless spirits are said to remain.
And yet again, we find that it follows our recipe: high trauma, high emotion, high chance of haunting.
And those frequenting the expanse have reported extreme cold spots, disembodied footsteps, voices, and whispering, and encounters with full-bodied apparitions and shadowy entities, while a handful of informal investigations have yielded high EMF levels, chilling EVPs, and orbs and strange lights captured in photography.
So as would be expected in a case file like this, you have a large variety of haunting activity going on, from the footsteps to the disembodied voices, the cold spots, and even the strange orbs that appear in photographs.
The most famous story surrounding this aged residence tells that the home was visited by an unruly bounty hunter who demanded George give up the slaves he was hiding. When George declined, it said the bounty hunter became irate, but that the house's ranch hands saw what was happening and came to George's aid. This legend furthers to tell that the bounty hunter tucked tail and ran, but that old George's ranch hands tracked him down, abducted him from around his campsite, and brought him back to their barn, where they judged and hanged the man for his crimes against humanity. It's claimed the vengeful spirit of this bounty hunter, long forgotten, remains across the estate's grounds, occasionally lashing out at visitors when crossed.
I'm not sure what's more chilling there, the tale of what actually happened, and they went and kidnapped him and brought him back, and judge, jury, and executioner took care of the problem, or the fact that the high trauma and high emotion of the situation caused quite a nasty sounding ghost.
The historic Buxton Inn. The historic Buxton Inn, located off East Broadway in Granville, Ohio, is a historic lodging, tavern, and event space that's strongly believed to be the state's oldest continuously operating inn, still located within its original structure. The historic Buxton Inn remains open to the public, offering overnight stays, dining accommodations, and event space, while toting tours of both the historic and haunted varieties.
Well, it definitely sounds like Ohio is very open to their ghost hunters, at least this being, I believe, the third one we've had on the list that is open to tours, and the second one on the list that is open to ghost tours specifically.
This aged campus is no stranger to ghost stories, and over its lengthy existence, both staff and guests have reported a range of phenomena, including cellular devices dying at random, lights that flick on and off by themselves, orbs and strange mists captured in photography, and frequent instances in which guests staying overnight tell of chilling dreams concerning their deaths. Furniture has been sighted moving on its own, doors have been spied inexplicably opening and closing, and ominous shadowy figures have been encountered in rooms 7, 9, and in the basement.
That has got to be one of the more extensive lists of paranormal activities all in one place that I've heard in quite a while. How about you guys?
Several informal investigations have yielded disembodied footsteps and EVPs in recordings, extreme EMF levels, and electrical malfunctions, and a lady in blue, thought to be the spirit of Bonnie Bunnell herself, has been encountered in and near room 9, pulling with her the scent of gardenias. Interestingly enough, a spectral feline has also been spied around the property.
That is one thing that we don't normally hear about a whole lot, is ghost animals, though they do pop up from time to time. That isn't exactly a standard thing across case files,
and is thought to be the manifestation of Bunnell's beloved cat, tied to her energy. Lastly, the spirit of Major Buxton has been encountered, and his cigars have been smelled across the premises.
Now, that is twice that it has mentioned a specific scent coming from the spirit world, and I find that incredibly fascinating because that's something else that isn't super common, though it is reported in a number of case files. The smell of the grandpa, or the smell of the dead mother, or whatever the case may be, the perfume they used to wear, that is common, but just the same it intrigues me because that requires an environmental manipulation of some type.
Ghost of Orrin Granger has been spied hurrying about, and the manifestation of General William H. Harrison, a friend of Granger's and a frequent guest of the inn, has been sighted riding his horse up the courtyard steps and, astonishingly, into the ballroom, usually when parties are underway.
I gotta say, that's as creepy as it is funny. The phantom ghost rider riding his horse right up the stairway into the place during the middle of a party, then probably vanishing nonetheless. But that's kind of funny just as much as it is creepy, right, guys?
The Cincinnati Music Hall. The Cincinnati Music Hall, located off Elm Street in the Over-the-Rhine neighborhood of Cincinnati, Ohio, is a classical music performance venue that serves as home to the Cincinnati Ballet, the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, the Cincinnati Opera, the May Festival Chorus, and the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra. Historically, the city of Cincinnati would purchase a plot of land that would one day hold the music hall in 1818 from Jesse Embry. In 1821, a hospital and lunatic asylum was established on site, and following an outbreak of cholera in 1832, the land would be utilized as a pauper's cemetery until 1857. In 1859, the old burying grounds would be converted into a park, with existing buildings used for exposition purposes until 1876, when it was turned over to the Music Hall Association, and in 1878, the hall was completed and was designed to host musical activities in its central auditorium.
So, in essence, the music hall was built on top of burial grounds. Very well, not a good idea, and the perfect recipe for a haunting, folks.
The hall remains open into the present, providing ample space for performances, and offers tours of both the historic and paranormal varieties.
I do believe that makes every single one of our haunted places tonight a place that is both open to the public, and most of which have had haunted tours available to the public.
Through and immediately preceding the Civil War, exposition buildings were used as makeshift hospitals for soldiers and as orphanages for children who lost their parents in the fight. And from the time of the music hall's construction, bones from the old pauper cemetery have been turning up. Disturbingly, relocated remains were never properly moved and were simply reburied across the property. Even more chilling, the 1838 explosion of the steamer Moselle would send remains of its passengers scattered over the city. When the pieces were finally gathered together, they were interred in a spot now covered by the Horticultural Hall's southern end.
Wait. Time out. You're telling me this place is built on not one but two burial grounds? These people are just begging for something to happen, right?
Not surprisingly, over its many years, both employees and patrons have reported a host of strange happenings, suspectedly tied to the site's dark past, including extreme cold spots, doors that open and close by themselves, lights that inexplicably flick from off to on, and the feelings of being watched, followed, or even touched by someone unseen.
One thing that I have started to notice is that these cold spots seem to appear a lot more in the negatively energized areas for some reason.
Several accounts from those working late hours have described encounters with full-bodied apparitions so lifelike they're mistaken for living, and even hold full conversations with those present before disappearing in a flash, or walking straight through walls or closed doors.
And those are the ones that we classify as the caretaker ghosts, just seem to kind of hang around the property and take care of things, interact with people, make sure everything is going good. But what do you guys think of the state of Ohio? From its cryptid creatures to its strange ghost stories, it has a lot to offer in the way of paranormal, in my opinion. Perhaps it is a paranormal state of mystery, or perhaps we're barking up the wrong tree. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, all you can do is look at the evidence, apply a little common sense, and you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right, that's it for this episode of the Dark Wolf's Den Radio Show for Wednesday, March the 2nd, 2022. So whether you're on the edge of a reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the den may be closing, but don't you worry, the weekend fun has only just begun. That's right, make sure you come back tomorrow, Thursday, March the 3rd, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as we will be back with an all-new episode of the Dark Wolf's Den radio show Freedom Flame series as we cover the false flags that have occurred throughout history, and there have been actually quite a few that you may or may not have heard of, and we're going to go over all that and more tomorrow, Thursday, March 3rd, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Then on Friday, March 4th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, our buddy AJ the Ripon Rabbit comes back to the airwaves for an all-new episode of the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show. That's right, he'll be discussing focus, something we could all use a little more of in this day and age. He'll be going over a lot of tips and tricks that will allow you to focus better during your daily lives. He'll be discussing that on Friday, March 4th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central on the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show. Then on Saturday, March 5th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, our buddy AJ the Ripon Rabbit comes back to the airwaves for yet another episode of the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show. This time, he'll be discussing tips and tricks on how to stay calm. So, going from staying focused to staying calm. And he'll be going over different ways to stay calm and different tricks you can use throughout your day so you don't blow your lid, if you will. And that'll be Saturday, March 5th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central on the Ripon Rabbit Hole live show on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Then on Sunday, March 6th, we missed Beat Eugene last month because of communist YouTube, but we will not be missing it this month as Beat Eugene will be back Sunday, March 6th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Can you beat Eugene? I know we're definitely going to try here in the Dark Wolf's Den. It's a really fun, interactive game show, family fun game, if you will. Come on over for trivia, games, and much, much more. And by the end of the night, we will find out who is crowned the king of Beat Eugene. Who can be on the podium? Can you beat Eugene? If so, make sure you come back and try on Sunday, March 6th, 2022, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. And that's going to round out the weekend here at Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the RiponRabbitHole.com. Do make sure you hop on over to the RiponRabbitHole.com. That is RiponRabbitHole.com. Over there, you're going to find a plethora of important stuff. First, you're going to sign up for your Backstage Pass. That's going to get you, your VIP pass. That's going to garner you access to all the rest of the rabbit hole. That's right. Also, while you're over there and once you sign up for your pass, make sure you drop Down the Rabbit Hole. That is our exclusive social media section over there. There's plenty of rabbits down the rabbit hole that drop information all the time. You can also listen live to any show we have as well as on demand, and even join myself and many other rabbits over in the 24/7 Backstage Lounge. We would love to see you all there. With that said, folks, one more thing, make sure you go on over to the freedomflame.com. That is thefreedomflame.com. We will be celebrating the annual Freedom Flame celebration on March 20th here on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, and we'd love to have every last one of you guys along for the ride. We have the countdown going over on the freedomflame.com, as well as a very informative video about everything that has led up to this point. Why is the Freedom Flame important? What is its significance, and why do we celebrate it every single year? All that and more coming up March 20th, 2022. Or check, once again, thefreedomflame.com. On behalf of AJ the Ripon Rabbit, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, Walt House, everyone at Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and you've been listening to the Dark Wolf's Den Radio Show exclusively on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Until next time, remember, stay awake, but dare to dream. Good night, everybody. Y'all know what time it is? I want to see it over there in the chat. What time is it, folks?
Unlocked and into the dark.
That's right, Sandy B. Buy the book, everybody.
Better left undone.
Buy the book Moon Madness.
And I'll never find you here. 'Cause no one's ever.
Come on, y'all. If you're still with me, I want you to put in chat. Let's go, Brandon. FJB. Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon.
Oh, what a widow. A peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner.
That's right, scroll it in the chat. Let's go, Brandon. Honk, honk, FJB, FYT. I want to see it all. Let's go.
What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way.
Neither can Brandon.
In this world that never stays.
Let's go, Brandon. We want to be free. Let's go, Brandon. Can't you see? Honk, 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 FJB. FYT.
What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider.
FJB.
Hide the lies and the alibis.
FYT.
What a sinner.
Let's go, Brandon.
Is it in her?
He ain't been in a her in quite a while. Oops, did I say that out loud? Let's go, Brandon. FJB. Let's go, Brandon. FYT. Honk, honk, baby.
Just illusion. I'm lost in wonderland confusion.
Said Brandon's lost in a wonderland of delusion.
Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion?
I'll go with dark delusion.
Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
I see you over the DWD show. Sandy B, X-Gen, Overprotected, with the Let's Go, Brandon. FJB, FYT, honk, honk, baby. That's right, honk, honk, honk. Come on, let's light up the Ripon Rabbit Hole. Let's go, Brandon. FJB, FYT. Thank you, folks. Do make sure you go over and check out our book on Amazon. I know it's Amazon. It's the only one that would publish it for me for free. It is Moon Madness. Definitely a very fun book. Please pass that around if you'd like to support us. That is the best way. You need to get something in return. All right, folks. I am Jerry Hicks. This is the Dark Wolf's Den Radio Show on Ripon Common Sense Radio Network, the Ripon Rabbit Hole.